There was a time when Sunday dinner wasn't complete without proper pudding. Not dessert, not arters, but pudding with a capital P. These weren't just sweet endings to meals, they were edible memories, passed down through generations and perfected in kitchens across Britain. If you hit that subscribe button and give us a like, we'll take you on a journey through 14 puddings that defined the 1970s. Drop a comment if you remember any of these beauties. Black Forest Gâteau. Black Forest Gâteau was the dinner party showstopper of the 1970s. Layers of chocolate sponge soaked in kirsch, whipped cream, and glossy black cherries, all topped with chocolate shavings and more cherries. It arrived from Germany, but Britain made it their own, turning it into the ultimate special occasion dessert. Every good hostess had her Black Forest recipe, and serving one meant you truly arrived. The combination of boozy cherries, rich chocolate, and billowy cream was pure indulgence. You'd find it gracing tables at anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas dinners. It was theatrical, impressive, and absolutely delicious. Though it fell out of fashion in the 80s, those who remember it still speak of it with reverence. Black Forest Gâteau wasn't just pudding, it was an event. Lemon Possett. Long before molecular gastronomy, there was lemon posset, simple, elegant, and surprisingly sophisticated for something made with just cream, sugar, and lemon juice. This medieval pudding experienced a renaissance in 1970s Britain, appearing in everything from Women's Institute cookbooks to posh restaurant menus. The magic happened when hot sweetened cream met fresh lemon juice, transforming into a silky, set dessert without any gelatine or eggs. It was the thinking cook's pudding, effortless yet impressive. Served in delicate glasses or ramekins, often garnished with a shortbread biscuit, it represented British cooking at its most refined. The sharp citrus cut through rich Sunday roasts perfectly. Today's chefs have rediscovered Possett, but it never truly left the hearts of those who knew its 1970s glory. Spotted Dick. No pudding list from the 1970s would be complete without Spotted Dick, the steamed suet pudding that made schoolchildren giggle and adults nostalgic. Made with suet, flour, and currants, the spots, this hefty pudding was a stalwart of British school dinners and family tables. It arrived at the table pale, cylindrical, and wonderfully dense, accompanied by proper custard or golden syrup. The name might have been amusing, but the pudding was seriously good, filling, comforting, and quintessentially British. It represented an era when puddings were substantial affairs, designed to satisfy hearty appetites after proper meals. Though health trends pushed it aside, Spotted Dick remains a symbol of British comfort food. For many, the smell of it steaming still triggers memories of childhood dinners and simpler times. Sherry Trifle. The 1970s belonged to Sherry Trifle, that magnificent layered creation that graced every celebration worth its salt. Built like edible architecture, sponge fingers soaked in sherry, custard, jelly, fruit, and mountains of whipped cream, topped with flaked almonds and glacé cherries. Every family had their own method, their own secret touches. Some used shop-bought Swiss roll, others insisted on proper sponge fingers. The sherry element made it feel grown-up, sophisticated, even slightly naughty when served to children who got giggly after their portion. It was beautiful to behold in its glass bowl, showing off those perfect layers like geological strata of deliciousness. Trifle was democracy in pudding form, everyone could make one, everyone had an opinion on the best version, and everyone had seconds. It was Britain's answer to fancy French desserts, and it was glorious. Steamed jam roly-poly. Jam roly-poly, or dead man's arm as it was cheekily known, was the ultimate comfort pudding of the 1970s. This steamed suet pudding, rolled around jam and wrapped in muslin, emerged from the steamer pale and soft, ready to be sliced and served with lashings of custard. It was the pudding of working-class kitchens and school canteens, hearty and unpretentious. The contrast between the dense, slightly chewy pastry and the sweet jam center made every bite satisfying. Strawberry jam was traditional, but raspberry and blackcurrant had their followers too. It took time and patience to make properly, the slow steaming, the careful wrapping, the anticipation as it cooked. Modern life pushed such labor-intensive puddings aside, but for those who remember, jam roly-poly represents an era when good things were worth waiting for. Pineapple upside-down cake. The 1970s loved anything exotic, and pineapple upside-down cake delivered tropical glamour to British dinner tables. Rings of tinned pineapple and glacé cherries arranged in the bottom of a cake tin, covered with golden sponge, then dramatically inverted to reveal a stunning caramelized top. It was pure theater. The moment of turning out the cake was always slightly nerve-wracking. Would it work? Would the fruit stay put? The combination of sweet pineapple, tangy fruit juices, and vanilla sponge felt wonderfully modern and international. It graced coffee mornings, dinner parties, and special teas throughout the decade. The cake represented Britain's growing confidence with international flavors, even if they came from a tin. For many, it was their first taste of something vaguely tropical, long before foreign holidays became commonplace. Bread and butter pudding. Bread and butter pudding was the thrifty housewife's triumph, turning stale bread into golden, custardy perfection. Buttered bread layered with currants, soaked in sweetened milk and eggs, then baked until the top was crispy and the inside was soft and yielding. It was economy cooking at its finest, nothing wasted, everything transformed. The 1970s version often featured a sprinkle of nutmeg and sometimes a splash of vanilla. It emerged from the oven puffed and golden, the bread crusts forming delicious chewy edges while the custard set to silky smoothness. Served with a jug of cream or more custard, it was comfort food perfection. This wasn't restaurant fare, it was home cooking at its most honest and satisfying. The pudding proved that the best things came from making do, from turning the ordinary into something special. Gooseberry Fool. Gooseberry Fool was summer in a glass, tart gooseberries cooked to a puree, folded through whipped cream, creating marbled patterns of pale green and white. This Old English pudding had a revival in the 1970s as people rediscovered traditional recipes. The sharp fruit cut through rich Sunday roasts beautifully, providing a refreshing end to heavy meals. Making it was simple but required good timing. The gooseberries needed to be just tart enough, the cream whipped to perfect peaks. Some cooks added elderflower for extra fragrance, others insisted on pure gooseberry intensity. It was served in tall glasses or elegant bowls, sometimes accompanied by delicate biscuits. The name, Fool, suggested something simple, rustic even, but the result was sophisticated and light. For those with gooseberry bushes, it was the perfect way to use a glut of fruit, transforming sharp berries into creamy luxury. Treacle Tart. Treacle Tart was nursery food elevated to perfection, golden syrup, breadcrumbs, and lemon juice in a crisp pastry shell. Despite its humble ingredients, it was pure comfort, the kind of pudding that made everything feel better. The 1970s saw it on school menus and family tables across Britain. The filling was intensely sweet but never cloying, the lemon juice providing just enough sharpness to balance the syrup. Some versions included grated apple or a pinch of ginger, but traditionalists insisted on keeping it simple. It was best served warm with custard or cream, the pastry crisp beneath that glossy, amber filling. Making it required patience, the syrup needed to be warmed just enough to mix with the breadcrumbs, the pastry blind baked to prevent sogginess. It wasn't sophisticated, but it didn't need to be. Treacle Tart was honesty on a plate, comfort food that never pretended to be anything other than delicious. Syllabub. Syllabub was elegance in a glass, the 1970s pudding for those who wanted to impress without too much effort. Wine or sherry whipped with cream, sugar, and lemon created a light, frothy dessert that felt wonderfully sophisticated. The alcohol gave it an adult edge, while the texture was cloud-like and indulgent. It was often served at dinner parties, spooned into delicate glasses and perhaps garnished with a curl of lemon peel or a single almond. The beauty of Syllabub lay in its simplicity, good ingredients treated with respect. Some versions used white wine, others preferred sherry, and each had their devoted followers. It needed to be made close to serving time, as the froth would gradually separate back into cream and wine. This transient nature made it feel special, precious even. For hosts of the era, Syllabub represented sophisticated entertaining made manageable, impressive results without elaborate preparation. Rice pudding. Rice pudding was the ultimate comfort food of the 1970s, that slow-cooked creation of rice, milk, and sugar that emerged from the oven with a golden skin and creamy interior. School canteens served it with a dollop of jam, but home versions were infinitely better. The proper way involved patience, long, slow cooking until the rice swelled and softened, the milk reduced to perfect creaminess. Some added vanilla, others insisted on nutmeg, and debates raged over whether to include an egg. The best rice puddings developed that treasured skin on top, slightly caramelized and chewy, contrasting beautifully with the soft pudding beneath. It was nursery food that adults never outgrew, the kind of pudding that made winter evenings feel warmer. Modern life moved too fast for such slow puddings, but those who remember understand that rice pudding wasn't just food, it was edible comfort, spooned out with love. Bakewell Tart. Bakewell Tart brought a taste of Derbyshire to tables across Britain, that perfect combination of pastry, jam, and almond sponge that made every bite satisfying. The 1970s version was often more rustic than today's refined offerings, thick almond filling, proper raspberry jam, and a pastry case that could hold it all together. Some crowned it with flaked almonds, others preferred it plain, but all versions delivered that distinctive almond flavor that made it instantly recognizable. It was tea-time perfection, equally at home at a village fete or a smart dinner party. The tart represented British baking at its most confident, simple ingredients transformed into something greater than the sum of their parts. Making one properly required skill, the pastry crisp, the jam layer not too thick, the almond topping cooked to golden perfection. It wasn't rushed food, it was the kind of baking that took time and care, producing results that lasted in memory long after the last crumb was eaten. Queen of Puddings. Queen of Puddings lived up to its regal name, a magnificent creation of breadcrumb custard base topped with jam and crowned with golden meringue peaks. This was British pudding making at its most theatrical, layers of flavor and texture that impressed both eye and palate. The base was rich custard mixed with fine breadcrumbs, sometimes flavored with lemon zest. Once set, it was spread with jam, raspberry was traditional, then covered with meringue and baked until the peaks turned golden. The result was spectacular, creamy base, fruity middle, and light as air topping. It demanded respect and attention to make properly, with each component needing perfect timing and temperature. The 1970s loved such impressive puddings, and Queen of Puddings delivered drama worthy of its name. For special occasions, it was unbeatable, a pudding that announced the cook's skill and the meal's importance. Jam Tart. The humble jam tart might seem simple alongside grander puddings, but in 1970s Britain, it was perfection in miniature. Crisp pastry shells filled with jewel-bright jam, strawberry, raspberry, blackcurrant, each one a small burst of sweetness. School dinners featured them, church teas couldn't do without them, and home bakers turned them out by the dozen. The art lay in the pastry, thin enough to be delicate, strong enough to hold the jam without leaking. Some preferred individual tarts, others made large versions to slice and share. The jam needed to be good quality, thick enough not to bubble over during baking, bright enough to look appetizing. They were often the first thing children learned to bake, standing on chairs beside their mothers, pressing pastry into tins and spooning in jam with intense concentration. Jam tarts represented the democratic nature of British puddings, simple, accessible, but capable of bringing genuine pleasure with every bite. Apple Charlotte. Apple Charlotte concluded many a 1970s meal with rustic elegance, buttered bread wrapped around spiced apple puree, baked until golden and crisp outside, soft and fruity within. This was autumn on a plate, the kind of pudding that made houses smell like home. The bread needed to be slightly stale, cut thick, and buttered generously. The apples were cooked down with sugar, perhaps a touch of cinnamon or lemon, until they formed a soft, fragrant filling. Assembly was almost ritualistic, lining the mold with bread, filling it with apple mixture, topping with more bread, then trusting the oven to work its magic. The result was magnificent, golden walls of crispy bread encasing the sweet apple center. It was thrifty cooking at its finest, transforming day-old bread and windfall apples into something special. Modern diners might find it unsophisticated, but those who knew Apple Charlotte understood its quiet perfection, comfort food that needed no apology. These puddings weren't just desserts, they were the sweet punctuation marks of family life, marking celebrations, Sundays, and everyday moments that mattered. Each one tells a story of British kitchens in the 1970s, when patience was still a virtue and good things took time. If this brought back memories of your own pudding-filled childhood, hit subscribe and give us a like, we've got plenty more delicious nostalgia to share.